This is FM 2023, Burning Questions, Stone Cold Solutions. I am joined today by, if you know the magazine Facility Maintenance Decisions, you know these two gentlemen. They are a lot of experience in the field in facilities management. They are also columnists for the magazine. To my immediate left is Daryl Rounds, who is Senior Manager for Global Workplace Mitigation with General Motors. And to my far left is Andy Gager, who is President of AMG International Consulting. Good to have you both here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last 3 years have not been easy. I don't need to tell anybody in this room that. It has forced almost everybody to rethink and revamp almost everything about the activities and processes related to how facilities operate and the people who operate them and manage them. So this is not a COVID session per se, but the pandemic has thrown a spotlight on the role of facilities in the health of occupants, and it has put the facility managers front and center in answering those questions. So what we'd like to do today is go through a series of topics that I think are sort of hot button issues for you folks, and we want this to be very interactive. So if you have questions along the way, please feel free to jump in, raise your hand, we will get to you. So let's start with probably the most popular topic that I've come across in the last few years. It doesn't matter what I talk to a facility manager about. I can be talking with them about HVAC or doing an interview about software. The topic always comes back somehow to staffing and recruiting and retention. So what I'd like to do is just start off with a kind of a softball question for the guys here, and just ask, in your experiences in your facilities and the facilities you are in, what strategies have you found for finding entry-level technicians that have actually produced some results? Either one of you.
You want to start?
Age before beauty.
What?
You like that?
Let me just,
Okay, I can
no,
take
no,
it.
no. I'll just swipe that respect out of the air. Let me just, you know, this is a good question, because I do get asked this all the time, is where are we going to get the next generation of our resources? And that's a valid question right now. What we've been doing and what we've seen in the past is we're depending more and more on the technical schools, reaching out to those schools, working with them to develop their training programs, tapping into that. I do see a resurgence in apprenticeships, particularly in the manufacturing field and the facilities field, the technical, the mechanical. So those are great resources, and of course, you know, some of these job boards that are out there that you could tap into as well. But anybody who's ever done any hiring, you know, boy, to be honest with you, it's a crapshoot. And some of your organizations right now, all we're doing right now is, you know, if they got a pulse, we'll hire them, okay? But we have to understand, you know, what is the process to get these people trained up so they can, you know, be successful.
Yeah, so let me take a stab at that, but before I do that, I want to do a quick check. How many people are FMs, like facility managers in here? Raise your hand. And how many are techs, like technicians or operators? Or both? All right, so in this day and age, especially in the social climate in which we live, you know, having a good job is worth its weight in gold. And, you know, traditionally, you know, when I was raised, said you need to go to college, you need to get a degree, and if you want to do something, but like, and that's not commonplace now. You have individuals that go to vocational school, and to Andy's point, they enter the trades and they take on a technical job. Then you have other individuals that might choose a career in the military But at the end of the day, you know, with respect to those two examples, they come away with a good set of technical skills. So in our business model at GM and how we execute facilities management, we outsource a lot of our work to some of the bigger like FM providers like the Aramarks, the JLL, and they tap. I've seen, I call them kids because it's relative. I'm not trying to tell them myself as far as my age is concerned, even though Andy's better looking than me at his age. But
Anybody under 50 is a punk.
all right, so you know, but you see a lot of young talent that are actually doing the FM work. So they're taking these kids out of vocation schools. You can go to some of your community colleges and take a look at those technical programs that they might have for recruitment. And then you can engage with organizations that exist to serve veterans, because the veteran work, like those veterans that are discharged from their respective branches, have gathered a suite of skills and services that can be useful to you in your work as facility managers in your business.
All right, and let me just ask, who in the audience has had, let's say, some success in recent months finding technicians, hiring technicians? Okay. Can I ask, anybody want to talk about what they have found, what they've done to find that success? Anything in particular?
We partner with community colleges in our county. We also have a large military presence, which a lot of individuals come in. So when we partner with community college, our pay is based on the years of experience that many people coming out of college will not make it. So when we took people from the military side, it made it easy because they have skill sets, but they also had years of experience, but also make the job more attractive, where they could be paid on a higher scale.
Question over there?
We did some evaluation of grades of positions and also did some upgrading to, HVAC licensure, a couple other positions after we did a holistic look at what we need moving forward and anticipation of some new equipment going in. So that helped us to recruit in one market. I cover an entire state, so other markets it's really rough in rural areas.
Anybody else has found success? Okay. Does anybody have a particular challenge that they came here hoping to get addressed about finding technicians, the recruiting process?
He had his hand
Oh,
up.
go ahead, sir.
Quite certain whether or not it's something that you can answer. My background is in affordable housing in the District of Columbia. And so I might be batting somewhat out of my league. I have read the magazines and the articles and picked up tidbits of information. However, I found that my industry, affordable housing, has been somewhat in the minority. Many of the folks here, this is probably my 5th year attending, are from larger commercial type establishments or educational hospitals, systems. I decided to come here every year to pick up and learn whatever I can to see how I can apply it. But in the affordable housing, it's residential housing, and of course in urban areas. And so, of course, it presents specific challenges in terms of some of the damages and repairs and things that you would see as opposed to a larger commercial development. So, one of my particular challenges is finding after hours services for people willing to render plumbing services, probably some electrical, major problems in these urban areas where they often fear for their own safety. And that has been a challenge, a major challenge for me today.
So,
I can.
I don't know if we'll be able to unpack all of that right here, right now, but what I will say is that I'm a member, actually an officer of an organization called the National Institute of Building Sciences, and we were enabled by, this is what you call a shameless plug. We were enacted by Congress way back in 1974, and I know that we do have a presence here, but I like to connect you to the Institute because that very issue is one of the things that we're trying to tackle. I think when you come to and hopefully I'm not disparaging when I say this, when you come to organizations like this, you see a great majority of the individuals really trying to figure out how they can make their business better, but it really, and you might come in contact with people like me that might be able to point you to a resource that can help you with an issue like affordable housing. So if we can connect after this, I'm sure that the people from NIBS will be more than happy to talk to you more about that, and then we can further unpack that.
Very good. Any other questions on finding technicians, finding and hiring? Okay. Let's move on a little bit.
You had
folks.
somebody in
I'm
the
sorry, go ahead, sir.
Thanks for, just an observation, when you talk about, really what you're tabling is the hearts and minds side of things. In an age when no one owns anything, they don't own their shoes, they don't own their cameras, they don't own anything. There's no ownership. So when someone approaches that hurdle of owning something and would never ever tackle something like concrete work, I mean, I'm not making this up, I'm just saying, so it's so far beyond their background and education, but it's not beyond their competency. So they'll take on something like that, and it becomes, it becomes like a cycle again. So it's a simple reflection. I mean, if you can get someone to understand what ownership means, what it meant to put up 3/4 inch drywall twice on an elevator shaft, it's like no concept of how much work that actually is. So it's a key as of ownership, in my experience, really.
And it sort of dovetails into the next thing I wanted to move into, which is once you have found these people and brought them in, the training side of things. So I would pose this to Andy and Daryl. In terms of identifying training needs for technicians to keep them involved, to give them that sense of ownership, if you will, are there particular things that you, I don't want to say mistakes that managers are making, but is there something else that they can be focusing on to identify these training needs and then provide the necessary training?
Yes.
Okay.
This I work with several different organizations around the world, and this comes up. So there's a difference between a job description and a job task. Okay, so most organizations have a job description, but it's not very specific on exactly what tasks that you're going to be responsible for in this role. So one of the first things I do recommend is, look, let's define exactly what a technician needs to do. These are the tasks that they are going to be required to do. From that, we call it a job task analysis. From the job task analysis, then we can do what's called a skills assessment with our current staff. From the skills assessment, we can then identify a skills gap analysis, and then that skills gap analysis then will identify areas that we need to supplement, or that we don't have that resource available in-house, so now we need to go out there. Okay, so that's how we can identify. It's very much a process. Okay, so again, there's a difference between a job description and a job task analysis. It's really important that you understand that, okay? Because I can hand you a piece of paper, and list all these things, right? And then, of course, that last one that says, and anything else we ask you to do, right? But it gives the applicant a clear understanding of what the expectations are. Back to your point, by the way, there's a huge word that seems to be really difficult these days, and that word is accountability. and holding people accountable. Okay, so if we have a job task analysis, it's black and white. These are the tasks that you're going to be required to perform, and I'm going to hold you accountable to execute those.
Yeah, so there's this mantra, adage, whatever you want to call it, that I kind of adhere to, is that, and it goes like this: like, people are the most important aspect of any enterprise. If you take care of your people, you take care of your business. So what that means to me is the fact that I need to make sure that the people that are working for me or working with me have everything that they need in order to be successful. So when you talk about training, like, do you really understand as a leader or as a person that's responsible for making sure that these people are trained properly? Do you really understand what these individuals need in order to be successful? So let me just ask a question to the group. How many of you, all of us have jobs, right? I would hope that here, some of us may be looking for jobs, and you might have a job, but like, if you had any position where you've had to actually perform any type of work or service for somebody, anybody that's felt that they didn't know what they were doing, raise your hand at any point in your career. That's almost all, that's a lot of people in the room. Some of you all that didn't raise your hands, you got it all figured out. I want to talk to you after this session. But if you think about how that made you feel and how frustrated you were, just imagine the people that work in your ranks and work for you. So it's incumbent upon us as leaders, because all of us are leaders in some way, shape, or form, to ensure that we understand what our people need. And to Andy's point, there's an expectation, and then there's the current state. And between the current state and the expectation or the standard, which usually goes into standardized work, there's a gap. So here's another shameless plug. So I'm involved with Pro FM, the Pro FM Institute, and I was responsible for a good portion of the operations and maintenance component of that. And as a result of that training curriculum, there's a gap analysis that one can perform to understand what their gaps are compared to what can be deemed appropriate to be able to execute FM as a professional. And I would encourage you that if you have individuals where you might see some gaps in competency, that you connect with them on the floor, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already there for you. But to Andy's point, you gotta have some type of understanding of what the needs are, so that the people that are working for you can be as successful as they can for the enterprise.
All right, very good. Questions?
Another observation.
Sure.
The reciprocity of ownership is taking care of the people who take care of you. So if you're taking care of someone, there's a certain level of expectation that goes, as the enterprise goes forward. I mean, time is not linear, it's not a straight line, it's a big spiral. That's how some people visualize. So the key is taking care of the people who take care of you.
With a question that occurred to me, Andy, when you were talking about accountability, and this is kind of maybe on one of the softer skills, but when it comes to improving the accountability and motivating staff, it's not something you can necessarily read in a textbook or take a test for, but any suggestions you would have about holding people accountable a little bit more, and then also, if it's related, motivating them?
Great question. Some of you will understand this, okay? There's a difference between stimulating somebody's performance and motivating somebody's performance. And people confuse giving individuals raises as a motivator. All right, money is not a motivator. Okay, it's a stimulator. So if I give you $1 more this month, what are you going to be looking for in 2 or 3 months from now? Another raise, right? I didn't motivate you. The short term, I may have motivated you, but ultimately, as leaders and managers and supervisors, our ultimate goal is to motivate our staff, right? Does anybody know what the number one, by the way, far and away, what is the number one motivator for employees? What? Did somebody say food?
Somebody's hungry.
Food.
I got to write that one down. It depends, but anybody? Recognition is number 2 or 3 on the list. Culture is a good one. You're on the right track. Number one motivator is, do I trust my boss? Now think about that. How motivated are you going to be as an individual if you don't trust the person you report to? Okay, so to your point, I need to build that relationship. Okay, I need to make sure that I build trust and relationships with my reporting staff, and it's vice versa. Right? A lot of you have heard the same saying, right? Praise in public, reprimand in private, right? Nobody wants to be embarrassed, okay, in front of their colleagues. So, but with that said, we also, as managers and supervisors, we need to clearly set expectations. And I'm sorry, I just want to go off just one minute. I can draw for you every single maintenance organization in the world. 20, 40, 30, and 10. Now, let's just keep the math simple. Let's just keep it at 10 individuals in your staff. I bet 2 of them are superstars. Give them a potato, a rubber band, a paper clip, and damn if they can't make a 12-gauge shotgun out of the thing. They're that good at what they do. Then I got another 40%, another 4 individuals that are very good at what they do. They come in, right, they do a good job, high-quality job, but at the end of the day, they go home, crack a beer, and self-medicate. I love that group. Then I got 3% of individuals that come in. They may be new to FM, right? They may be new to maintenance, they may be brand new, but they have potential. And then every group has a 10%er. Any adjectives that you would like to use for a 10%er? Good, right? Every fiber in their body is negative, right? And they're just an anchor on the rest of your organization. So we as managers and leaders need to do something with that 10%er, right? But as supervisors and managers, we spend 80% of our time with which group?
Superstars.
Which group? The 10%ers, right? And the reality is we're not going to help that group out.
Right.
Really where we should be spending our time is with that 30%ers. The 20%ers, they get it. Okay, they get it. We don't really manage or supervise them because they understand what to do. So it's really important for managers to get that trust, to get that trust, right, and that motivation for the employees. Identify which group your individuals fall in, and how do we manage those in those 4 different groups.
I was going to say, one of the things that I find that I've done over the years with that trust issue is, even in times where you are having challenges getting new folks in, don't leave a problem in place. Because you're better off moving that person on if they're not going to get with the program because of the balance that have it. That also builds the trust, because they know that person needs to go if that's the situation. And they're more willing to work with you during that shortage and replacement time, rather than leaving somebody lingering if you're not taking care of them. So.
To round out the top 5 motivators, empathy is there as well. So, sorry, I took up all your time. Thanks everybody for coming.
No, I was just gonna add to that briefly and say that those are all functions of engagement, right? So how engaged are you as a leader with with your people? And I'll go back to the comment that I made about putting your people in the best places to succeed. So you want to have the right people in the right places, right? So if you're truly engaged, you understand what makes your people tick, so to speak. You understand what they're motivated by, what stimulates them. And there's a model that I use even for myself. Like, is this really a good gig for me, right? And there's three things. You can call it, you can say COP, the COP model, the CPO model. Like, does it really align with my competency or my skill set? What the things that I'm good at doing? Is it a good fit for the organization? Or because I'm in this role, is it good for the organization? But the P, does it align with my passions? Like, if I have to, like, waking up, like, I could be good at something and it's a good fit for the organization, but if I dread coming into work, I'm not gonna be motivated. So the idea would be to understand around those three dimensions, like, where your people fit. And you have those 10%ers, I'm trying to do the math right. You have those 20%ers, and you have the 40%ers, and then you have the 20%ers, like, on each of, like, on that curve. The key is to increase engagement to the point where everybody comes up in the spirit of collaboration, but and furthermore, co-elevation, right? So that you have a highly functioning organization getting the mission of the organization executed.
And if all else fails, bring food.
Food, yeah.
All right, very good. Anything else on the staffing side, the technician side of things? Okay. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about technology. I get a lot of questions about CMMS. I have a lot of different discussions with FMs about the role of technology and how well they're using technology. So just by a show of hands, how many organizations here have an actual CMMS or IWMS, some piece of software for that?
Wow.
Okay.
Let me ask this question. Does anybody know what CMMS means? Or IWMS?
CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, excuse me, and then IWMS is integrated work management software. So essentially the things that help you keep track of your work orders. Ideally, they do a whole lot more than that. Mm-hmm. But I guess the question for Andy and Daryl is, are there any particular, I don't want to say mistakes again, but any particular ways that you see people not maximizing their CMMS? Is there particular areas where they, of a CMMS or an application within the CMMS that they could be using better?
I'll let you go first, because I can take the rest of the day on this one.
Well, have any of you heard of the term garbage in, garbage out? You know, like, if you have a system that's designed to make things better, it's only as good as the information that's input into that system. So I think one of the main detractors from optimizing your output is not ensuring that the data is of good quality, right? So you want to make sure that everything is organized such that the technicians that are actually doing the work are doing it in such a way where you don't have a lot of rework to do. So there's really a lot of interaction that needs to take place so that, like, for a particular routine task, this is the right thing to do. Like, it might be changing filters, right? So, like, if this one technician is changing filters one way and then somebody else comes another way, this person might be getting it done in 10 minutes. This person might be getting it done in an hour. So you got to have some type of standardization to drive the waste out. Also, I'll let you drive on that, but just don't take too long.
All right. If you ask me, one of the most important things that you have to have correct, is your asset hierarchy. You have to have an accurate asset hierarchy in your facility because so many things are being driven off of that. And that asset hierarchy is loaded up in your computer system. What you store in your MRO storeroom, right? Making sure that we have the right materials at the right time. The work order system, okay? Our PM system, our predictive, our corrective maintenance. All this data is captured in your computer system in the name of this thing called continuous improvement, okay, or root cause failure analysis. Okay, that's what the data is, and we have to have good data. I have to understand where our labor hours are going. We capture that in the computer system, okay? There's a term that we use out there. It's called a bad actor list, all right? We use data to drive continuous improvement, and that bad actor list is where the issues that we're having, whether it's a safety issue, a mechanical issue, we're spending exorbitant amount of money on this particular area. It's all the data. We cannot make good business decisions using poor data. We get in trouble then.
And then also, I'll just add to that, sometimes our PM tasks are created in a vacuum. So you need to ensure that the individuals that are actually doing the work have some buy-in on how the tasks are executed. You just don't want to prescribe, say, well, I need you to just give them a work order and you just do this. No, they need buy-in because they're the ones that know better how to get the work executed. And in doing so, and doing periodic reviews of how things get done can help you eliminate waste out of your processes.
Anybody have any particular questions either from the technician point of view or from the manager's point of view about this kind of software? Did anybody come here with one today? Yes, go ahead.
Managing the challenging can't get parts. So what's the answer to that? How do you use the CMS and how do we get past this problem?
In case you didn't hear the question, she would like a solution to the supply chain problem. Using a CMMS.
Yes.
Yeah. Ask your physician to upgrade your Prozac to 5,000 milligrams. You know, I'm pretty passionate about MRO and materials. One point in my career, I was a global guy, global materials guy. Look, everybody's trying to get lean. Everybody's trying to go lean. The supply chain had a major, major hiccup. They're trying to recover. That's where the partnerships come in with our suppliers, but there's different things that we can establish as far as our storeroom or our MRO warehouse is set up. We can do, look, we can have supplier agreements in place, we can do consignment, we can do vendor managed inventories, we can do a whole lot of different things. For sure, we can review our min-max levels. I constantly requested from my suppliers updates on their lead times because everybody in this room knows the lead times are getting really squirrely out there. So just because I could purchase an item and it took 2 days the last time I ordered it, it could take 2 months, right, the next time. That's part of that supplier agreements that we have to have. We need to partner. Here's the other, and I'll stop after this. One thing that everybody has to understand, why are your suppliers in business? To make money. So we can't keep going after them and driving price reductions, because we have to understand that they're in business as well, and they're in business to make money. So once we understand that and we can come to an agreement, we can now set up some really robust supplier agreements where they know that they're going to be making some money and you're assured that you have a supply chain, a steady supply. That's a tough question, though.
Well, let me try to solve world hunger real quick. I think it comes down like to really like thinking outside the box, especially when it comes to planning, right? So if you have, and you probably won't be able to solve the supply chain issue, but as it pertains to your process, the work, the maintenance work that you're performing, you really need to understand, like really have a deep understanding of the work that's going on in your organization. Because as a manager, we rely on technicians just to get it done, like to get the work done. And it becomes easy, especially when you have good technicians and you have good things in place, just to let things run on autopilot, so to speak. But then when you get this hiccup, like, well, I can't get parts, right? Now you gotta stop and take a look at, well, is there any way that I can do this differently? Is there any way that this can be done by using an alternative product? So like you gotta take a step back and really take a look at your operation to see like what can be done. But then also, if you know that something that took 2 days to get now takes 2 months, you have to plan accordingly. And you can leverage your CMMS to accommodate for long lead items. But it's a constant review. It's a constant planning review of your work. And I wish I could say that it's going to get better soon, but with how things are going on in the world, it's going to continue to be dynamic. But that's what we exist for, in order to keep those things under control.
I do want to add just one more point to that. I'm going to go back to the comment when I said your asset hierarchy needs to be accurate. Because as we drill down through the asset hierarchy, we're then getting down to the consumables, right, and those items that we should be having in our storeroom. Now, some of you can relate to this, okay? Maintenance technicians are wired to fix things, okay? These are the individuals that were born with erector sets and Legos in their crib, okay? So that's how they're wired. So whether they have the right parts or not, right, their job is to fix or repair things, okay? So there's a standard out there in industry. If you need one item, buy 3. One for the job, one for the storeroom, one for my secret stash, right? There's not a facility in the world I haven't gone into that doesn't have secret stashes of materials. And that's just self-perseverance for these technicians, right? If we don't have it in the MRO storeroom, I just happen to know where one is, right? Because that's how they're wired, and that's how we're expecting them to do their job. But what they don't understand is that's tying up cash flow. Those are assets that they're tying up right there. Yes. Good.
So as someone who, when the pandemic started, never worked remotely, never worked from home, we were in the office. And we saw almost instantly that there was a shift in getting items in, inventory, filters, things that, like you said, take 2 days, now it's taking 3 days. You had to widen your list of contractors and vendors that you went to. It's no longer, I'm just going to go to the kitchen filter or American filter to get filters. Now we're going, filters online. Oh, the HVAC guy, where do you get your filters from? Oh, can we get some of your filters? Do you have another person that you're sourcing? So you just have to widen your net of potential and, just look for different alternatives, like you said, like think outside the box. Who did you go to before? Now you need to go to this type of people. Maybe you're going to 10 different people and getting whatever you can from whoever. And stockpiling was another thing that we did. Once we knew it was like, oh, wait, it's taking 6 weeks, it took 2 days, get more. Order what you can, get whatever you can when you can.
Yeah, but when you know your operation, wise decisions around that, right? So if I know that my mean time to repair for this particular equipment is going to cause me to have one of these in the next 6 months, as opposed to waiting 4 months or 5 months and 3 days to order it. I'm going to order 2 of them because it's going to take me a year to get it. So you have to become wiser about your planning. To your point, Ms. Hester,
And when you do that, what happens to your budget?
it goes up.
Question back there.
Yeah, just the IWMS and CMMS, ability with it. Are you guys more pro open back ends, data in and out, or with garbage in, garbage out, are you guys want this is my CMMS, not to touch it?
I'll let you take that.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I understand what the question is.
So connecting it to other systems. So you have your CMMS, your IWMS. If it's an open a back end that allows you to connect to your VMS or to other systems that other people are using.
Within your organization?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to answer that question like a true consultant. That depends. There has to be a high level of integrity of the users and who's putting that data in. Then there has to be some type of an audit system that audits that system. So I don't have any issue with these other accessories feeding into that. I just want to make sure, and that we're going to put processes in place that are ensure that the data that's going in is valid, because it'll just bog it down. I mean, one of the big things we're going to talk about, actually I'm talking about it tomorrow, is, backlog, right? I go into so many organizations, we look at the backlog, and it's massive, and it's just massive. And you'll never work that backlog up. And 99.9% of the time, a lot of that backlog is just garbage, that just people loaded up in there.
Okay, may I ask you a question? Is there a specific challenge that you're facing in your organization around that, or you just
No, it's
more
just-
curiosity?
More and more is common now, right? So everything goes to open APIs, wanting to share data back and forth. So I was just wondering, is on that subject of IWMS and CMS, have you guys seen it? Is it something as a facility manager that you're not allowing or allowing? As a member of the DIBS community.
I don't know.
Fair enough. Question?
I work for a company that uses a CMS, and then we have VMS systems that all communicate. They have an HVAC system, light controls, all that stuff. The light controls go out, HVAC system has a alarm. It sends it straight to a lot of maintenance repair work order. Before, I work for a grocery, a big grocery store. So before we used to have this visitor alarm, which is very annoying, which is product alarms. And let's say an employee is stocking, they take the stuff out, and they let it warm up and put it back in, it's going to be warm. So it'll just send a lot of false alarms, and it became cumbersome that we just got rid of it because it drives a cost, false alarms, and then at so many stores, it's hard to kind of keep up with that. And same thing with the HVAC. The alarms are great, but if for some reason some parts taking 6 months to get in, you're still getting that alarm. And if you're not on top of it, well, you just keep driving costs, but then if you keep going out there, keep sending the same part, sometimes it's in pre-technicians, they'll get 3 parts and you just miss it. Those are one of the challenges that I see with that kind of information. It's hard to say, let's turn off this alarm for this one HVAC unit without there being so much red tape. Like, why are you going to turn it off? Oh, it's parts. And then it's a lot.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? We've covered a little bit about software. We've talked about staffing and recruiting. Did anybody come to this with a particular challenge in an area that we haven't addressed? I want to make sure we have that opportunity for folks to ask what they came with. Yes, sir.
Mine has to do with supply chain as well. Purchased 3 RTUs that tell me they're going to be in on October. And what I experienced in the past is because of the supply chain issues, that the initial proposal had to be adjusted because by the time the units came in, the cost. Is anyone else experiencing that? And what have you done to fight it?
So the question was, you ordered 3 RTUs and they came in,
October. October.
2 weeks ago.
okay,
I won't get them, they won't come in until late August.
okay.
But on other issues, other proposals I've had and items I purchased, the proposals took almost 6 months to cost me more when they actually came in because it was so long for them to come in. Supply chain.
Okay. Anybody else? So the price goes up because of the delay in the supply chain. Anybody else running into that or similar issues? Right on here in front?
Yeah.
Anything you're doing in particular?
And a few different projects, I've heard the same thing. And what the contractors are saying is, like, the more you can pay upfront, the better it is for them to try to lock in prices. And then if they can get a payment and they lock in the price, then the hurdle is off of you. It's on them. So they need to step their game up and deal with these manufacturers to try to get them in on time. I mean, I've heard this across the board, from tenant build-outs to, you know, modernizations with the elevators. Like, we're going through this right now, where they're begging for the money. Nobody's working anymore without getting some money up front.
Yeah. All right.
I
Sir.
wonder if this gentleman's petition, yeah. So you're saying you're gonna laugh at me, I know it, you're gonna laugh at me. But I was in a position where I had to give it to someone else. Yeah, it had to do with this analogy, so bear with the metaphor. That's Sniffle, I was in icy condition in front of a relative's house, and it's not clear, but my back bumper got cracked, right? Again, you're gonna laugh at me. But the solution, so I had to have body work, had to go through insurance, and yeah, so they couldn't get the parts. I said, you know, I didn't do insurance. I was going to fix it myself, right? DIY, do it yourself, right? And so the key of this conversation, this petition, to answer, I went to eBay, bought a bumper, and then gave it to the people who the body shop guys. If you've ever gone to the body, if you've ever worked in a body shop, they're very, very specific, right? And it's great. Now, it used to be horrible waste hazmat curtains that caught all the spray and dumped it, and you would find it in Lake Michigan. I'll stop. The key to this conversation is that these people took the bumper. I don't have a fancy car. Took my bumper and said, "Yeah, we'll put that on," because they couldn't get it. They could not get it. And so you apologize for the anecdote. Go to eBay, right? But maybe there's something there. You know, go to the obvious alternate channel, perhaps. You know, because the insurmountable opportunity was having me fix it, and believe me, those guys know what they're doing. They really, you know, you're going to end up with something you're happy with, right? Right? So, in an unhappy world, perhaps that's an estimate, yeah. I wish you the best. I wish you the best.
Thank you for the observation and the insight. Sir?
I'd like to hear any tips and tricks y'all have about getting your staff excited about using CMMS.
The question is, how do you get your staff excited about using the CMMS? And what is the challenge that you're facing? Just not interested in using it? Not.
That percentage of folks that don't need to be managed and are fantastic at their job and can do anything except for work on a computer.
Yep.
That's
The number one item in my storeroom was a keyboard, because my technicians believe the harder they hit the keyboard, the better the data that was going into the system.
That's fine.
I'm actually working with this right now, with the company I'm working with right now. The older generation doesn't want to use it. The younger generation, that's all they want to do. They don't want to fix the equipment. They just want to play on the computer, right? So there's a generational gap right there. But What we're trying to do is communicate with that group the importance of why the data. We're not trying to make your job, and this is a hard sell. Everybody in this room knows this. This is a hard sell. We're not trying to make your job harder. We're actually trying to make it a little bit easier. And by you using the system, that helps us identify the, as we say, the burr under your saddle, right? That issue that you guys are fighting every single day. And that's why it's so important that you capture the data in the system so we can analyze that data and we can put corrective actions in place. I know it's a tough sell. I really do. Try food. That's apparently a good motivator.
Yeah, I mean, are you guys using like mobile devices or tablets?
So far, I've gone every direction, except for the app. The app apparently makes it a little bit easier, but if I can't get them to use their iPads or the computers, why would I pay extra for the app?
So do they have like mobile devices that they're supposed to be using?
Yeah,
So
and I know there's a management aspect of that, but I want them to want to do it, not for me to be driving the nail.
and I think the biggest piece is, to his point, what he said, like, like showing them how this makes it easier for them.
Like comparing everybody's logged hours and whoever has the best logged hours, incentivizing for that. Making a competition within the shop. Like, one of the things I work on the design and review side where I work. But our shop, I help our electricians get their OneDrive set up on their phones.
Show them how to save drawings into their OneDrive on the computer, then they can actually pull drawings when they're out in the field, and they can see, hey, I need a PowerPoint, it's right there on my phone. And just by giving them, it gave them a tool to feel they liked it a lot. So I think your point about convincing them that this helps them, maybe showing them how it can help them. But if you have the CMS's tool that is hard to use, pain in the butt, everybody hates it, you're selecting the wrong tool. You gotta find a good one.
Let me just go back to that other word I used. If that's a requirement, then we got to hold people accountable. All right, and if they're bucking it, okay, then we have to deal with that a different way, okay? And again, I'm dealing with this right now with one of the clients. Last week they only accounted for 27% of their available hours in the CMMS. So we're going to be doing a whole lot of coaching moments next week, okay? And if they still refuse, then we're just going to have to follow the process. Not to be really a hard nose about it. Obviously, we'd like to go the more gentler route, but at some point, we're going to be like, we got to do it. It's a requirement of the job now.
you can just use the logic too, like, or just like you, right? So has it, like, I ask you a question, has there ever been anything that you were asked to do that when you were first asked to do it, you was like, man, this sucks. But then after, like, somebody explained to you, like, the value proposition, it's like, okay, I get it, and now you love it. I mean, if there's something like that, just think about, you have to put yourself in their shoes, right? And then with respect to what's been said about making their job easier, if you can, you have to do a good sales job and like making them understand, like, this is really good for you. And to the gentleman's point about logging hours and tracking hours, you know, there's a quote, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. I think Jay-Z said that. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. You can take a look at the data and it justifies, like, you would justify the means, and hopefully, and maybe throw some prayer in it, they'll get it.
Yeah, you want to lead with the carrot first, then use the hammer as the last resort. Like,
Right.
try to exhaust that lead with the carrot first.
Yep.
Just real quickly, related somewhat to your question, but when we asked about who has a CMMS or an IWMS, it seemed to me there were a fair number of people who didn't have one, didn't have a maintenance management software. Just anyone want to be brave enough to say why? And is there a particular roadblock to whatever, getting that software? You know, gentleman over here.
I work for a mid-sized retailer, and we can't afford just the cost of the ticketing software. We mainly use Excel, and other than we can't edit at the same time as the document, it's worked out fairly well for us.
So in your case, it's a cost consideration or justifying the cost. And I would offer that to Andy. I know you've written extensively about making the case for investments in maintenance.
That are relatively cheap. You can do, I mean, a lot of them are hosted on the cloud, so you don't have to manage it. But yeah, I mean, CMMS systems, you can get really sophisticated. I mean, look, there's a lot of companies that are on SAP or Maximo or some of these other huge CMMS systems, but there's some really good, smaller, particularly for the niche in their market is specifically for your organizations like yours. So yeah, we can chat.
Question over here. So, if we didn't hear, a couple of things that she mentioned as challenges are the changes brought on by COVID and holding people accountable and keeping them involved and active. And then also, I forget the first.
The changing culture, get to now, instead of having people do like they're let's use the service orders.
Yeah.
Let's use the system.
Yeah, so getting people to actually use the system, the occupants of the buildings to use the CMMS, putting in a request. Anybody having that challenge or anybody have a suggestion? Yes, sir.
It needs to be created in a comfortable work atmosphere by training and motivation. Majority are thinking if the report is there, they might lose the job. This is why most of them are reluctant to not be CMMS.
I think a lot of times, obviously, people don't like change, but I think a lot of the times, they don't see the whole big picture. They only see their little piece. Why do I have to do this? I haven't been doing this in my house. But then if you try to explain from the beginning to the end where the impact is, get them to buy in a lot better. So you have to a lot of training on the front end, but show them the bigger picture, not just what their piece is. Yeah.
We call that change management.
All right, well, very good. Thank you much for attending today, folks. This brings us to the end of our session.